Novak Djokovic alongside Alex EALA. One brief moment, one unexpected name, and suddenly the entire tennis world is left scrambling for answers no one saw coming. Why would a legend of his stature deliberately shine a spotlight on a rising teenager like this? What exactly did he notice beneath the chaos in Melbourne that everyone else completely overlooked? And is this simply a sign of respect or the early signal of a much bigger shift in the sport that no one is fully ready to understand yet?
Players coming from respective countries, like she's coming from Philippines, which is now a big deal. She's been the biggest ever, tennis player from that country, which is a big country and there's big interest. So things like that happen. I mean, it's, you could argue that it was, maybe a poor schedule and maybe they could schedule them on a bigger court. Yes, but again, she's so young and she's just coming through. So, and obviously the first couple of rounds, the schedule is so packed, the big courts with big names, it's difficult.
Something unusual is unfolding in tennis, and it's not coming from a racket, a ranking, or a scoreboard, but from a reaction because when Novak Djokovic, a man who has defined greatness through Grand Slam titles and high-pressure moments, suddenly stops to praise a 20-year-old rising star like Alex EALA with rare intensity, it sparks a question that almost feels uncomfortable to say out loud. What exactly is he seeing that the rest of the world is only just beginning to recognize?
Into the tournament as number 44 in the world, the 15-win, 10-loss season so far. The best result was the Dubai quarterfinals, where she lost to Goff in the end, and her best win actually came against Goff a couple weeks later in Indian Wells, who was number 4 in the world at the time. Her worst loss was against Parks at Australian Open, who was 99 in the world at the time. Her form on the clay hasn't been great. She has lost more matches than she's won. She's had a couple of tough draws as well, losing to Ostapenko and Fernandez. So playing against a qualifier in this first round will really go a long way to get her confidence back. These two have never played before, first time meeting, so we'll see what happens here because, of course, Pavlyuchenkova has made a French Open final and EALA is looking for some form on this surface, so it'll be a really interesting time to play. If Pavlyuchenkova is going to win this one, she needs to use that confidence and experience on this.
This was never meant to be about disruption. It was supposed to be just another routine chapter at the Australian Open, a tournament that has mastered the illusion of control, where schedules run with precision, branding feels flawless, and chaos is something that exists far away from the spotlight of the main courts.
So meeting Alex EALA for the first time was absolutely amazing because obviously she's become such a huge point of Pinoy pride, someone whom we can be proud of, whom we can watch because she's still so young and building her career. So for me, it's such a thrill meeting her in person.
Yes, and I think it's so great for young Filipinos to see such an icon on the international stage, and nakaka-excited kasi na-inspire din sila to really get into sports and to try tennis, and malay mo.
From Miss World to tennis na raw.
Yet somehow, in the middle of all that precision, one name began to bend reality itself, and Novak Djokovic didn't just acknowledge it. He leaned into it in a way that felt less like simple praise and more like a warning carefully disguised as admiration.
I know it's not always easy to play against a local hero, but you managed to dig deep and also score in the moments that were very important. What do you think made the difference tonight?
No, I think I kept the intensity well throughout the match. She's a very intense player and has really good shots, so I'm really happy with the win.
And you also had a lot of fans supporting you here in Linz tonight. A lot of fans from the Philippines, but I heard they actually live in Austria. Some of them are in Vienna, some of them in Linz, in Salzburg. What did it mean to you to also have a lot of people cheering for you?
It means so much. Hello, mga kabab.
At first glance, it sounds simple. A legend praises a young player. Tennis has always followed that cycle where veterans offer a respectful nod to the next generation, give a few encouraging words, and then move on. But this felt different because Novak Djokovic did not sound polite. He sounded cert, and conviction from someone who has shared eras with Roger Federer and Rafael Nadal carries a kind of weight that simply cannot be faked. What makes it even more compelling is that this respect did not appear out of nowhere. Players across the tour have been quietly aligning themselves behind Alex EALA in a way that feels less like casual support and more like collective recognition. They are not just reacting to her results, they are responding to her presence, to the way the atmosphere shifts when she steps on court, to the energy that seems to follow her matches, because what unfolded during her match was not just unusual. It was nearly impossible to control, thousands of fans flooding toward a court never built for that level of attention, lines stretching for hours, people standing in places never meant for viewing, all hoping for a single glimpse of a player who, on paper, should not yet be drawing that kind of crowd.
In this one, she needs to get ready and move on the clay well. Now, she has played well at this tournament. She hasn't played well on clay in general in her career, but at this tournament, she has got some wins. So if she can use that confidence at this tournament and try and move well on the clay, she might be able to get the win here. Interesting matchup here. Of course, Pavlyuchenkova coming off a long losing streak, and EALA trying to get some wins on clay. I'm going to go with EALA in 3 sets. I reckon she'll get it done in the end. She has had a couple of tough roads and a couple of tough opponents in the last few matches, so I'm going to go with her in 3. And she is the the favorite, I guess, or the higher ranked player in this match.
And instead of distancing himself from that chaos, Novak Djokovic leans into it. He openly acknowledges the scheduling mistake, which in itself is rare, but then immediately reframes it as something meaningful, almost inevitable. He points out the obvious in a way that feels like no one else had fully processed yet. A country of over 100 million people finally has a tennis player they can rally behind, and the system simply was not prepared for what that actually looks like in real time. That is not just a compliment because potential is theoretical. Impact is what forces systems to change. You can sense it in how other players talk about Alex EALA even when they are not directly asked. There's a subtle tone of protectiveness, almost as if the locker room collectively understands that what she represents goes far beyond rankings or match results. They see the crowds, they hear the noise, they recognize the cultural shift unfolding right in front of them, and Djokovic, more than anyone, understands what that kind of shift looks like before it fully arrives. So when he speaks up for EALA, it does not come across as a casual endorsement. It feels like recognition from someone who has witnessed this pattern before, and that is exactly where the story starts to feel almost unsettling.
So I remember attending the first round of her match, which was a tough match at the US Open, and then I went back home, and then I was contemplating coming back, and I wanted to witness her win because I think she has such an amazing head on her shoulders and the game, and I think she has a voice and a platform that's going to, transcend the sport. And as we know now, sport is not just tennis. It's fashion, it's art, it's culture, it's having a platform. And I think she does brilliantly of merging all of those.
If the chaos surrounding her matches is not a problem but a signal, then what comes next is not something the sport can simply fix with better scheduling. It becomes something that demands real structural change. And a system already struggling to contain the early signs will have to decide whether it can adapt quickly enough to keep pace. What makes this even more powerful is the emotional layer beneath it all. Fans are not just watching Alex EALA, they are investing in her, waiting in lines for hours, standing in the heat, missing out on seats, and still celebrating as if they are witnessing something historic. And instead of pushing back against it, they are embracing it, supporting it, and in the case of Novak Djokovic, openly defending it. Because there is an unspoken truth running through all of this that no one is directly saying, but everyone seems to feel: tennis needs this. Not just another talented player, but someone who expands the global map of the sport, who brings in new audiences, new emotions, and new expectations into a system that has, at times, felt far too predictable.
What are your most recent realizations about playing professionally at a very high level?
I think, especially this year, one big realization I had, I was talking to one of my coaches, and it was crazy how things changed before and after Miami, how many doors opened up, and of course all this attention and everything, and it's crazy because we were saying like everything that I'm doing is still the same. Like our routines are still the same, the people surrounding me are still the same, my tight circle. So he told me, so Alex, what's the lesson in that? And I thought about it and I said, what? And then he said, the lesson is that when you're doing bad, it's not the.
And that is why Novak Djokovic's words land differently. He is not just speaking about one player, he is speaking about the future. A future where the sport is louder, more chaotic, less controlled, and far more global than ever before. A future where a match on a smaller court can feel bigger than a final simply because of who is playing. A future where the biggest issue is no longer empty seats but too many people trying to get in. And if that future is already beginning to reveal itself through Alex EALA, then Djokovic's so-called bombshell is not really about the present, it is about what is coming next. Because when a legend stops criticizing chaos and starts defending it, it usually means that chaos is no longer temporary, it is transformation. And once you accept that this is not just a passing surge but a structural shift within the sport itself, the attention surrounding her no longer feels surprising. It starts to make sense, and the reactions from top players begin to align with that reality, especially when those reactions consistently lean toward encouragement, protection, and genuine excitement rather than skepticism or distance. What stands out most is how naturally this support has taken shape, because in a sport as individually driven as tennis, where players are trained to stay inwardly focused and guard their competitive edge, this level of unified and vocal admiration for a rising player is incredibly rare.
What did you make of her run in Miami and her as a player?
Yeah, I thought it was really fascinating. She uses her leftiness really well. When she went on that run, it was really impressive how she handled the big moments on the stadium court. What's interesting about her draw in Madrid is if she beats Tomova, who does she play second round? It would be Swiatek, who has that bye. So I love this in women's tennis right now, where you get like a compelling matchup maybe a month after the first one.
Yet with Alex EALA, there is a clear shift in tone, as if the locker room collectively understands that her rise is not coming at the expense of others, but is instead contributing to something that benefits the entire ecosystem of the sport. Players who have spent years navigating the pressure of global attention seem to recognize the weight she is carrying, and rather than leaving her to handle it alone, they are stepping in with public support that feels both strategic and genuine. This is where Novak Djokovic reframes what could be seen as mismanagement or inconvenience into something far more meaningful, evidence of her growing significance. When he speaks about overcrowding as a positive signal, he is indirectly shielding her from criticism, shifting the focus away from logistical shortcomings and toward the deeper reason those issues are happening in the first place. And that kind of intervention carries real weight, especially when it comes from a voice that influences conversations at the very highest level of the sport.
I mean, I would like to start with giving the credits to Alex. I mean, what the hell she played in the first set. Yeah, I mean, she was smashing the ball and she was cleaning the lines and all that, so wow, it's a next generation coming. That she's gonna come up and she's gonna be really good in a couple of years. So first of all, big credit to her.
Novak Djokovic has built a reputation for speaking openly about issues that affect players, and his willingness to step in and contextualize Alex EALA's situation sends a clear message to both fans and organizers that she is not just another emerging name, but a figure who forces serious consideration in how the sport prepares for its future. It is one thing for fans to generate momentum, but it is something entirely different when a 24-time Grand Slam champion helps shape the narrative around it, especially in a sport where certain regions have historically been underrepresented, where the journey is not only about winning matches, but also about carrying expectations that extend far beyond the court, and that is something many professionals recognize even if their own paths look different. The emotional and cultural weight attached to EALA's rise is visible in every packed crowd and every delayed entry line, and it is precisely this weight that transforms her matches into events that feel larger than their official round or ranking significance. This collective awareness among players is also reflected in how they speak about the broader evolution of tennis, because the sport is no longer confined to its traditional strongholds. And the emergence of new markets is actively reshaping what success looks like in real time.
We're going to let you get off court, but real quick, caught off guard, to say the least. She was going for broke, had nothing to lose. She pushed you to the limits tonight, but you pulled it off. And how were you? First of all, what do you think about her game? I mean, look at her future.
Yeah, I mean, she's really good tennis player. Goes for her shots, takes the ball early, rips. Being a lefty is always tricky, competes really well. I mean, obviously she's beaten a lot of top players this week. I don't really think she needs me to tell her that she's a great player, that we're not going to see enough of her, but we definitely are. And she proved that tonight. I mean,
the Australian Open, which has long positioned itself as the most accessible and globally inclusive Grand Slam, is now facing the full consequences of that identity as previously untapped fan bases begin arriving in overwhelming numbers. In that sense, the chaos surrounding Alex EALA is not an anomaly, but a preview of what the sport will increasingly need to manage as its reach continues to expand. What makes Novak Djokovic's perspective particularly compelling is his ability to frame these developments not as immediate problems to be fixed, but as signals of a changing system. And as this story continues to unfold, it becomes clear that the relationship between established champions and rising stars is evolving into something more collaborative than hierarchical. The traditional gap between dominant figures and emerging talents is being softened by a shared recognition of what the sport needs to grow, and that recognition is producing moments of support that feel unusually unified in such a competitive environment. Instead of guarding territory or minimizing new challengers, top players are increasingly choosing to highlight and elevate them, and in doing so they are actively shaping the narrative of tennis's next generation.